Hello and welcome to the series where we look at humans versus chess computers. We are taking a historic look at the progression throughout our history of strategies developed by humans to combat the ever-increasing power and intelligence of chess AI. This is the fourth video. We are in 1996. We are in Game 3 of the 6-game match between Kasparov and Deep Blue. This game started on the 13th of February 1996 in Philadelphia. Deep Blue, the terrible faceless monster in Kasparov's words, with the white pieces, opened the game with pawn to e4. The match is tied at 1-1. Deep Blue won the first game. Kasparov came back and with his left hook and won the second game, and is now playing a Sicilian defense in the third game. And in this video, we are going to talk about something relating to chess computers and humans and chess that we haven't spoken about that much before. And it starts with this move. This is called the Alapin. You could call it a C3 Sicilian. These names, if you don't know, are names of what we call openings in chess. Openings, they are part of what we would call chess theory. And what is that? Well, chess has been played for 600 years with the current rules, give or take. Some people say 400. We have chess books dating back at least 500 years with these rules and people writing down games, discussing what is the best way to open up the game, what is the best strategy to get all the pieces involved and win the chess game. And let's take a look at this position we have here, which is a standard position in the Alapin Sicilian. Normally, we have this rule of thumb or heuristic in chess that you don't want to bring the queen out too early unless you have a very good reason. Why is Kasparov doing it anyway in this position? He's doing it because in the Alapin Sicilian, white plays pawn to c3 in order to support a later push of this pawn to d4, creating this pawn chain. And with pawn to c3, there is a drawback. This knight cannot land on this square. What does that mean? It means it cannot chase away the queen. Therefore, white cannot force black to lose time or lose tempi with the queen, and that is why bringing out the queen is justified. How does this relate to chess computers specifically? Well, we've talked about this thing called the horizon effect. And what is the horizon effect? Well, chess computers, even ones strong like Deep Blue that can calculate 200 million positions per second, well, they have this horizon in their calculation where they can look many moves down the line, and then at some point they can't get any further because the exponential growth goes up too steeply, and it would have to calculate a gazillion moves to get one ply deeper. So that is the horizon effect, a horizon that even a powerful computer like Deep Blue can't look beyond. That relates to the opening stage of chess in a very specific way. And this is the way it relates. We see castles here by white, by the way. At the start of the game, the pieces are in chess completely inactive and they are very disorganized. It looks very nice the way they are set up, but they are not working together at all. That means that there is a long way to go. There's a very long way to go. I think actually I'll take this move back because this is actually the critical move with this whole thing. So I'll take this move back, have this move in mind just for a moment, because you will maybe notice something about that. So In order to organize your chess pieces in a way that makes sense in relation to what your opponent is doing in chess, you need either to calculate further than the computer can, or you need to understand things about chess that calculation cannot tell you, but experience can tell you. Things that we have seen Kasparov use, like in the last game, with the strength of attacking with a queen and a bishop when you are facing a queen and a bishop of the opposite color. And that is why we must ask the question, in this position, is Kasparov really playing against a computer, or is he really playing against a human? Because the Deep Blue team were allowed to have a human chess grandmaster write what is known as an opening book for the computer, and they were allowed to update that opening book along as the match goes on. So after the first game, they updated the opening book with new ideas, because the grandmaster, American grandmaster Joel Benjamin, he saw that in that game, even though Deep Blue won, it played this move pawn to h3, and he actually found that this was a weak move, and that Kasparov would probably go back with his team, analyze it, and find a way to maybe not win, but not lose against this move, and therefore he programmed in this other move. So up until now, every decision by the computer has not been by the computer. Really, it has been by Grandmaster Joel Benjamin. It has been pre-programmed. If you reach this position, play this move, and if he plays this, then play that. So this is a very, very slight deviation. Otherwise, this game is exactly identical to game one, but now the computer plays this. And we can see that Kasparov is confident. He must have found some improvement with his team. Otherwise, he of course would not play the same opening again where he had previously lost. Now, this move threatens to come in and capture here. So Kasparov captures first so as not to go down material. And this extremely subtle difference, bishop comes here, of not including this move but playing this move earlier, ends up making a huge difference. Pawn to a3 with an attack on the bishop. The bishop does drop back and the knight gets developed. So we had almost exactly the same position. You can go back and see Kasparov also played his queen back in that first game where he had the black pieces. The knight jumps in, and we do see the exchange of bishop takes bishop, just like in the first game. Queen recaptures. Still, this move is not included. Instead, we have the bishop here. That is really the only difference. But in chess, the slightest difference can mean everything. And now we see something that we didn't see before. In the earlier game, this queen was harassed by a knight coming here, and Kasparov dropped the queen back. But since Kasparov is able to, he is now capturing this knight, so it cannot come back and harass. And it looks like he is giving a very strong pawn center here that may be hard to challenge for him to the computer. So why would he do that? It looks like he may be tactically winning a pawn. And if you think knight takes knight here is the point that he is tactically winning a pawn, because if pawn takes, then queen takes and he would be up a pawn, well then you are wrong, but I will not hold that against you. No, he of course understands that Deep Blue will play this move, and this is what happened. So now the knight is up for grabs. Kasparov does not want Deep Blue to capture here and allow that. So he plays this tricky in-between move. Knight comes here with a check, so there's no time to take the queen. Queen takes knight, material is equal, and the queen steps out of the way. So now we have a material imbalance. Let's talk a little bit about it. So if it was not about winning a pawn with a tactical sequence, what was it about with these two pawns? What that is about is playing a long game. And he's saying, well, you may have more center control with these pawns, true, but in order to advance these two pawns, what do you need to do? You need to move them to white squares. Do you have a light squared bishop that can support them? No. But I have a knight that can help me defend against it. So he is saying, okay, maybe I will not be winning with this, but it will be extremely hard for you to make any progress. Queen comes to d3, refusing the exchange of queens, and Kasparov slowly starts targeting this backward pawn that cannot easily advance, and it is defended like so, trying to advance this pawn. Kasparov says, no, let me put my queen here. You are of course welcome to exchange, but if you do, I will be able to stop the advance of the pawns with a rook. So that is what happens. Queen takes queen, and now rook takes queen, and still the pawn cannot move. So Deep Blue tries something interesting. It tries to give up the pawn in exchange for this pawn. Says, okay, we'll undefend this pawn, and I will attack this pawn instead. Kasparov says, no, I like my long-term advantage. Play here to have everything defended. Everything? Do you have everything defended? Deep Blue asks, and come here with the bishop attacking this backwards pawn. Yes, I do have everything defended. We hear Kasparov say, playing rook to a4 with a defense of this. And Deep Blue challenges the rook. Of course, if Kasparov were to take, this pawn could come here, and we could see this pawn advance. So Kasparov's not going to take, he's just dropping his rook back. This allows, though, this rook to come in, threatening a very dangerous check. Kasparov says, no problem, I will just castle. With this move, I'll also be attacking the bishop. The bishop comes out of the way with an attack against the rook, and the rook goes to a8, and now this rook is potentially freed up because this rook will take care of defending the a7 pawn. An infiltration move by the computer, and Kasparov starts pushing his pawn. Notice how it is stopping the advance of the pawn. Computer shows a very nice bit of chess understanding here, activating the king. We are very close to being in the endgame if we are not already in the endgame. That's a point you could argue. So you want an active king. A very nice move by the computer. Rook comes to a4, threatening an exchange of rooks. So this pawn is targeted. It is also defended. And impressively, the king is activated further by the machine. It's very impressive chess understanding exhibited by the machine here. Kasparov lashes out with a pawn, trying also to activate his own king and gain space on the king side of the board. King comes further in. Now the king and the rook are looking at c4. All this time you may be wondering why rook doesn't capture here. Of course, it's defended by the bishop. And for humans, not for computers, by long backwards moves are statistically the type of moves that we miss the most. The bishop is attacked by the rook. And we see something very interesting, a fork of the knight here and the rook. The rook comes up and attack the bishop. And what does the bishop do? It captures the knight. And why is that kind of funny? Well, it is because these two pawns are doubled in every single game between Kasparov and Deep Blue. So something deep about the chess understanding of these two entities is about the discussion of the strength or weakness of these two pawns. Rook comes here, finally defending this pawn after the bishop has gone, so it was up for grabs, if therefore it is defended. And Kasparov says, oh, I see you activated your king, let me do the same. And the king is ready to challenge. And Kasparov pushes in the center, hoping for pawn takes here, so he could straighten out his pawn chain. Deep Blue does not oblige and instead plays pawn to g3, starting to mobilize these pawns to freeze these pawns in their position. Kasparov then captures. That, of course, is check, so it has to be recaptured. And what we are seeing now is a forced, what we would call simplification. A check is thrown, the king moves over, and the rook goes back, saying, I would actually like to capture this pawn. Okay, the pawn is defended, but it is only defended once, meaning that rook takes pawn is now possible. Rook takes rook, and rook takes rook. So does Kasparov have won a pawn here? No, because this whole sequence, he understood that he was leaving this guy behind. Rook takes pawn, and as you can see, through this relatively simple exchange of pieces, we have reached a late endgame with a pawn versus a pawn here on the queen side. They look to be equally strong, backed up by equally strong and well-positioned pieces, and we see a 3 versus 3 here on the king side, with Kasparov's pawns being theoretically weaker because these two are they are doubled, and this pawn is particularly bad since it can't even move, and maybe Deep Blue was calculating and saying that maybe this was a weakness that was exploitable, but in reality we see this move from Kasparov. He pushes this pawn. This is extremely critical. If this pawn is allowed to continue, it will be very close to becoming a queen. This cannot really be allowed. So the computer can choose to play pawn takes pawn. In that case, however, rook takes pawn, and all this tension will have gone in this side of the board. And with rooks, a rook versus a rook and 3 versus 3, this is what is known as a theoretical draw. That means that it will be easy for any player who wishes to force a draw from this position. And when I say any player, I mean any world-class player. And that means that Deep Blue has to think about if in this position it has any alternative to capturing this pawn. The problem is if it doesn't, this will go on, and if it advances this pawn, well, we will advance this further. If we try to stop it, we will lose it again. And what does that mean? That means that there is no way to stop the exchange of these two pawns, and that means that the game is a theoretical draw. So what does that mean? It means that Deep Blue won the first game with the Alapin Sicilian. Then the human advisor, the chess grandmaster and opening expert, looked at the game and said, okay, we won the game, but actually Kasparov had a great chance that he missed in that game, So I will make this slight deviation and play bishop e3 instead of h3 at move 7, I think it was. And that slight change probably was very important, because maybe they could have even lost the game, because Kasparov came in with his fists up saying, I'm playing the same opening that I lost in. What does that mean? It means I have been with my team of grandmasters and I have analyzed it and I have found improvements in my own play. So Deep Blue did play this new variation, but Kasparov was still able, with his opening knowledge, to hold a pretty comfortable draw, and in the next game he will have the white pieces again. That is like having the serve in tennis. You get to move first, and as you know, Sun Tzu says, he who chooses the battlefield wins the match or the game or the war. I think it's the war, but you get what I'm saying. So that was game 3. I hope that you had a great time watching this video. I certainly had a great time making it. I would like to give a big shout out and thanks to all my patrons, lovely people who make this series possible. And I would like to say to anybody out there, if you would like to support me, help me make more of these videos, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/ASMRchess. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.